Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I would like to share with you all two analogies that have helped me a great deal in the last 10 years when approaching Puerh and also trying to distinguish the quality of the raw material of the tea we're drinking, which can always be quite difficult. And there's always that struggle that goes beyond just being able to identify if a tea is good or bad. And there's that next level of being able to identify good from great, which I feel is far more difficult. And I think it's even more difficult once you go into the realm of Puerh tea. And then you get into things like Ancient Arbor and Famous Mountain Puerh, which can be quite difficult, even more so. Not only because of the price, but of the accessibility. So kind of as a rule of thumb, I've talked about in the past, roughly 3%, give or take, of Puerh tea is being made from old tree material or Famous Mountain material. So what does that mean? So quick refresher, Puerh grows predominantly in southwest China in the Yunnan province and surrounding areas. It comes from Camellia sinensis variety Assamica, and these tea trees can easily live hundreds of years and sometimes over 1,000 years. And before, there would be a number of trees that would grow deep in the mountain, high elevation, growing naturally without pesticides or fertilizers, almost self-sustaining. And the ones that have survived for hundreds of years are continued to live that way, self-sustaining, with deep root structures, etc. But now, with international demand and popularity, there's obviously plantations that are being grown, smaller bushes that are being grown, and there's really been a big debate on the different types of tea that's grown from smaller bushes, let's say 20, 30, 40 years, and tea that is picked and produced from trees that are well over a few hundred years. And usually tea that's from older tea trees or more famous mountains are significantly more expensive. So how can we as consumers of Puerh or buyers of Puerh be able to distinguish what is truly the difference of Ancient Arbor and old tea trees, and how do I find that tea and how to identify that tea? And unfortunately, it really is a buyer's beware market, and you don't often will see things written on the wrapper of a Puerh tea cake that says, oh, wonderful small bush material. Right? It's usually saying something like old tree, ancient tree, gushu, wild, right? Because those terms, let's speak frankly here, they sell better. They're more attractive to listen to and read, and they pique interest, and ultimately will get the consumer to make the purchase. So with all of that in mind, these two analogies I'm going to share with you, I used a lot when I teach and lecture on Puerh tea, and I find it to be quite helpful. Storytelling and analogies always tend to be very helpful to kind of put things into perspective. So the first analogy I'm going to share with you is actually in relation to a very famous Chinese alcohol called baijiu, which is an alcohol made from sorghum flour. And so I learned this from my tea master, and it's also a pretty common saying in China. And they say, well, if you take a closer look, right, you have baijiu, and one of the most famous brands is that called Maotai. And many people believe, give or take, about 90% of Maotai is fake or mislabeled or fraudulent. So it's always very difficult to get authentic Maotai. And there's always the concern of, am I actually drinking authentic Maotai? Who knows, right? Unless you've had that experience, then you would be able to discern it much easier. So the analogy goes like this, and they say, if every day you drink fake Maotai, and maybe that's just part of your lifestyle. So every day you're drinking that for months, years, etc. And then one day you have the opportunity, maybe unknowingly, you have the opportunity to drink an authentic Maotai. That the taste will be somewhat simple and normal and light. Right? So that's how it says. They say every day you drink a fake Maotai, and one day you drink the real Maotai, you will think the taste is just very simple, ordinary, and light. And I think it's beautiful because I think it directly applies to Puerh in a very similar fashion. If every day you are drinking small bush Puerh teas that maybe you think are older trees, you don't know, right? Every day you're drinking small bush teas or fake Puerh teas, and one day you have the opportunity to drink Puerh from a very old tea tree. You might also think the taste is very simple and light. So let's digest that a little bit. Let's go into that analogy a little bit more and understand what they're saying. So some people will say, a question that might come up, well, why, if it's an authentic Maotai or Baijiu, why is it so light and simple? And I think that's the wrong question. I think the real question is, why are all the fake or fraudulent Maotais have such a weird, significant, strong flavor profile? I think that's the real question. Because maybe they have such a strong flavor profile is because they're trying to convince you that the money you spent was worth it. Trying to convince you of something that it is not. And I think that can also be applied to kind of more aggressive raw pours. It's so common that teas are very aggressive and bitter and astringent, and so they're trying to convince you of something special. And then you kind of go forward to, okay, well, if it's very expensive, why am I paying so much money for something that's so light and simple? Well, maybe it has more to do with than just the first initial taste experience, right? With beverages and especially Puerh, it's also about the feeling in the body. Maybe you're paying a more premium because you're getting something that is cleaner, maybe slightly more beneficial for the body, maybe more comfortable in the stomach the next day or two after you drink it. And therein lies the value. And that is particularly true for Puerh tea. A lot of these smaller bush teas, fraudulent teas, can be very aggressive in flavor profiles. But sometimes they can have a lot of caffeine or irritation to the stomach. And I have noticed with ancient Arbor, old tea tree Puerh teas, or famous mountain Puerh teas, when I drink them, yes, the taste may be light, but it's very deep, comforting, durable, and very, very comfortable in the stomach, and sometimes even making me feel very relaxed and calm. So that feeling is far more valuable than just the initial taste. So sit with that, think about that for a moment. That analogy has helped me a lot. Another analogy that has been very beneficial that I've shared a lot is that of perfume, believe it or not. And it's a good analogy because I think maybe more people are more familiar with fragrance and perfume than they are some Chinese famous alcohol that's not readily available here. Now, maybe now it's more so than it was before. But I don't drink a lot of alcohol. I don't know if you all do. So maybe that's not the best analogy. So it does apply to perfume. So this is how the analogy goes. If you purchase maybe a low quality or cheap perfume and you apply it to the skin, it can be quite harsh when interacting with the skin, maybe creating a rash or maybe a little bit of irritation. The aromatic qualities are very loud and obnoxious, and it's short-lived, right? So a little bit of irritation, loud and obnoxious, short-lived. But if you had the opportunity to try very premium fragrances or perfumes of high quality, you will notice something very, very different. When they're applied to the skin, one, they're very comfortable. They're very comfortable, they don't create irritation, and they're very subtle. In fact, they're so subtle in the beginning, it can be hard to notice them. But as they interact with the heat of the skin, the oils of the skin, they begin to develop. They become to develop and have more unique characteristics and even layers in the scent. And the scent is very long lasting. And this is another great comparison directly to that of ancient Arbor Puerh. If you look at kind of some of the smaller bush teas or these teas that are very aggressive, they're very strong and very bitter, they're very loud and in your face, but oftentimes you will need to use a lot of tea in a teapot to get that flavor profile. Maybe you need to use a lot of tea in your gaiwan to be able to get 10 or 15 infusions. And there is some unique aromas, or they're strong, but they're just 1 or 2 layered. They aren't very deep. And you move over to Ancient Arbor, it's very different. You only need a very small amount of tea, maybe 3-4 grams, and you can produce 13-14 infusions because the tea is very durable and abundant all on its own. One, maybe because of that deep root structure, right? Where smaller bushes don't have a deep root structure. And also, the aroma is just unbelievable. A really good quality Ancient Arbor pour. You can heat up the teapot or gaiwan, then empty it out, then pour the dry leaves into the pot, and then appreciate the aroma. It's just sweet and aromatic. Just the tea leaves themselves, even before you brew them. And then after you do an infusion or two, you can then smell the pitcher. After you have emptied out the liquid into the cups, it's still hot, you can smell it. You'll notice Ancient Arbor has a very perfume-like aroma that is sweet, aromatic, and almost like stone fruit. And very, very special, and very many layers to that aroma. So I really like that analogy. I think it applies very well to Puerh tea, especially from older and ancient tea trees. So those are the 2 analogies that have helped me a lot. I hope they help you in helping discern the quality and help you think a little bit about what are you drinking. Why is a particular tea so expensive? Why is it so sought after? And try to come to those conclusions and answers on your own, through your own experience, rather than just adhering to someone else or someone else's opinion. Try to really make sure experience is your best friend here in the development and education and building your skills around tea, and also identifying the quality of the raw material. So I'll leave you there. Always, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'm happy to address them in future videos. If you found this video beneficial, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe, and we'll look forward to seeing you in some of my future videos.